What are the Denver Broncos' keys to victory, and who are some players to watch in Sunday's matchup against the Washington Commanders? 2:25 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff. Well, you're going to get that and much more with a cup of coffee on this morning's episode, Good Morning Broncos. Good morning, Broncos Country. Happy Friday. Welcome into another episode of GMB here, Mile High Sports, on our YouTube page. You love Colorado sports. This is the place to be. Every team, every day. I'm Cody Roark, host of the show here. I'm also a reporter here from Mile High Sports, covering the Broncos every single day over there at milehighsports.com. I shoot some cool footage. I post recaps on social media, and you get a show here every single day, not to mention written content as well. Joining me here today is my good friend Aniello Piro. He sits up with me when the Broncos are in town at Empire Field and Mile High. When they're home, he's up in the press box with me. AP, what's up, my man?
What do you do, baby? Happy to be here with you. I have to break up some of the toxicity that you're dealing with in Broncos Country, so I'm happy to provide. I feel bad for you sometimes.
I haven't read the comments. Has it been toxic?
No, but you have to every morning you got to put a little smile on your face and
put on a show.
Sometimes you could use someone to bounce back and forth, so I'm here to try to be the voice of reason.
I love it. We're hoping to get, AP on at least once a week, maybe AP on twice a week. We'll see what we got going on. Just because, you know what, the season's a grind. It's long, man. I did look, last week I looked at some of the comments, and a lot of Raiders fans were commenting before the game even happened. And so you get some Washington Commanders comments this week. I try not to read the comments just because, I read enough of the toxicity and negativity. We have some awesome people like Dennis and obviously D-Rock that are always in the chat every single morning. So, hey, we appreciate you if you're an everyday tuner in, or if that's even a word here.
Listener.
On GMB.
Whatever you want to call
We appreciate it so much. But obviously today's episode of the show is brought to you by our friends over there at Superbook Sports. Make sure you use promo code MILEHIGH, and you can get up to $250 in terms of bonus bets when you sign up and wager on the same day. We'll dive deeper into that a little bit later on here. But, AP, it's been a week of the Broncos gearing up for Sunday's game against the Commanders. And, hey, I think the biggest thing is the vibe, despite them coming off a loss, going to the locker room, talking to these guys. They're locked in. They're ready to rock and roll, man. And they really believe that last week, obviously they're frustrated at the outcome, but they believe they're much better, that they're in a better spot going forward than maybe they were last year, which, if you go back and you watch the film, I feel the same exact way.
Yeah, and we heard Cortland Sutton, Pat Surtain, some of the big guys on the team that talked after the loss yesterday. And look, I understand the box score comes out at 17-16, 16 points, the dreaded number, the failed onside kick to start the game. Russell Wilson under 200 yards passing, did have 2 touchdowns. But if you watch the game, I know there's a lot of analytic people and stat people that want to use that to boost this case about same old Broncos. That looked like a different team to me. Russell Wilson looked like a different quarterback, thinner, more mobile. You'd like to see them maybe take some more shots down the field, but hopefully if Jerry Jeudy, can maybe come back this week or whenever he does come back, that really opens up their deep passing game. A lot more play action from Russell Wilson. And at the end of the day, I think you said it on Monday's episode, it's week 1. Did you see the Buffalo Bills? Did you see the New York Football Giants? The Cincinnati Bengals, the Broncos are not, they're not mutually exclusive to having a bad performance in week 1. So I'm excited to see how they can carry this over. Was it a good game? No. You'd like to win that game. And frankly, the Raiders have owned the Broncos in recent time. Plug your ears, Broncos Country. Turn the page, move forward, and let's see what this team can do, because from my vantage point, our vantage point, they did not look like the same old Broncos of last year.
Well, let me tell you this, Broncos Country, AP, he's not a Broncos fan. He has no allegiance to the Broncos. He's a Cowboys fan. So if a guy like that who's been through some misery himself can see some of the things that Denver's doing, I always encourage fans, I get it. Losing sucks. No, you don't want to do it. Denver's lost for 6 to 7 years, and of course, that's not who you want to become. Denver is a losing team, and they're right now trying to rebuild that into becoming a winning football team.
Right.
And that takes time. It's not just an overnight process, which if you've tuned in, you've watched this show, we've talked about this ad nauseum here. But I feel like on today's episode of the show, we need to dive into what do the Broncos need to do in order to come away with the win on Sunday, because this isn't the same Washington Commanders team either of years past. This is brand new ownership led by Josh Harris. You have a young athletic quarterback in Sam Howell who's got some tools to him. You got a pretty good core of receiving options with Terry McLaurin. You have Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, Jamison Crowder, tight end Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson. They have dudes. And they also have former AFC West rival Andrew Wiley playing right tackle for them. So for Denver, where they're at, I think it's a very interesting juncture because a lot of people are like, well, it's the Commanders. They should beat them. Folks, you got to stop applying last year to this year, 2 years ago to this year. This is a brand new NFL season. Teams that maybe were good last year might be bad this year, vice versa, right? So I think that it's early on, it's week 1 here, but the Commanders are an interesting team. Now, in terms of overall production offensively, very similar to the Broncos offense last year, though they averaged less yards per attempt or less yards per gain on their plays offensively. They had 3 turnovers. Sam Howell threw an interception last week. They had 2 fumbles overall in this game. And I think Denver's going to have to find a way to get, obviously, pressure. And the way that the Raiders' offense was, here's the game plan against the Raiders. Stop Josh Jacobs. That's loading the box. And so Denver was predicated in just hoping that, hey, if we're going to lose, we're going to lose because of Josh Jacobs. Unfortunately, they made some plays, and Denver missed some kicks in that game. But the Commanders are going to be a tough team, and they're coming to town. They've got a lot of energy behind them now under new ownership. But let's talk about keys to victory. And I wrote this over there at milehighsports.com. For Denver, offensively, it's, hey, get some explosive plays downfield. Get that going. But here's how you do that, right? You can set it up one of 2 ways, AP. Denver with Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine, and they ran for 94 yards on 21 total carries between those 2 last week. If Denver comes out and let's say if they get the run game going, you know what that's going to do? It's going to force Washington to stack the box a little bit, play that. That's where you can take some shots now in the passing game. Or here's another thing. Maybe you open up the run game with the pass game, right? You take a couple shots downfield, you get some momentum, and you're like, hey, this guy, Cortland Sutton, whether it's Marvin Mims, who I project to have a big game in this game, if they get some downfield shots, okay, well, now they're going to play a little bit off, and that's going to allow you to run the ball. So if Denver can just dictate and control the pace, they're going to have a great chance of winning this game. But it's tough going against Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Chase Young. We'll see. He's questionable for this game with the neck injury, but they got Montez Sweat, who's also pretty damn good himself.
Well, and look, I know it didn't work out against the Raiders, but that is essentially what they were trying to do with the onside kick to start the game, is punch the Raiders in the mouth, seize momentum, seize control of that game. It just didn't work out. And it's one of those situations where if the Broncos convert that onside kick and score, Sean Payton looks like a genius. Obviously, it doesn't work out, and they get clowned for it. But I think you say the right things here, Cody, and whether it's using the run to establish the pass or maybe even, I don't know how Washington's looking at this team, but this Bronco offense, yeah, they've got Russell Wilson as a name, but they have not been explosive. So maybe Washington comes into this with a game plan of stopping the run, forcing the Broncos to pass the ball, but maybe they almost reverse engineer that if you're the Broncos and come out, take a couple deep shots, try to establish that, hey, Russ can still throw deep. We can do this stuff in the passing game. I think the biggest thing is you don't want to become one-dimensional. And the second half in particular, I know the game as a whole against the Raiders was a bit of a slower pace, not many drives for each team, but I felt like they got a little run happy, where it was just Javonte Williams, Samaje up the middle, 2-3 yards, whatever it might be. Maybe the lack of having a dynamic tight end with Greg Dulcich played a role in that. But you want to see them open up the playbook. You don't want to see them lean on one facet of the game versus the other. You need to be versatile, especially against this Washington defensive group. But, the Broncos got the players. It's just a matter of can they come out and execute it. But, we'll see how that shakes out.
Well, and I think the biggest thing as well is you have to see, okay, you have to adjust quickly. How's the defense playing you here? I do think that we're going to see a little bit more of a bigger role. Look, I think Javonte's going to run. I think Samaje's going to run. But I think we're going to see Jaleel McLaughlin introduced a little bit more this week here for Denver's offense. And, hey, look, if Denver has success running the ball and you're getting a guy like Javonte who, here's the thing, AP, he looked pretty damn good running downhill. Like, he ran through contact. He had a couple, in my opinion, runs that would have been a great candidate for that moron on Good Morning Football's segment there, Kyle Brandt's angry runs. Javonte looked good for his first game back. There's a couple of things. They felt like they missed some opportunities. They missed some plays, some yards out there on the field. And, look, that's what you learn from week 1. You go back, okay, hey, this didn't work. This worked. How can we continue to build on it? That's the mentality of these guys going forward here. Another key, I think, is going to be to fluster Sam Howell a little bit, right? A young quarterback. Now, here's the dynamic. Here's the tricky part. Sam Howell, he is athletic. He can get to the outside. If your defensive lineman get too far upfield, he's going to take it and duck up underneath and run for yards, and you're going to have to account for that dynamic of his game. But he's got a good arm on him. He's got some upside to him. He's got good receiving threats here. So Denver's going to have to come correct here. But I think we're going to see Washington kind of spread them out a little bit, more so than what we saw. The Raiders went more tight, heavy formations, extra personnel, condensed, bringing the wide receivers closer to the offensive tackle or the tight end, and then running their route concepts out of that short to intermediate stuff. Nothing really deep from the Raiders this past week, which was a little interesting considering the history, that we saw. They were taking shots downfield a lot last year, but that was with Derek Carr. and not Jimmy G. But Jimmy G's got the deep ball capacity to him as well. But Denver, I think, helped dictate a little bit of that by, hey, we're going to stop Josh Jacobs, and we're going to force you to try to get some chunk plays downfield. And, the Raiders unfortunately sustained some drives. But with Washington, they're going to spread it out a little bit more here. And I think so much pressure gets put on. People say, oh, the pass rush is there. Pass rush is not just on the outside linebackers, AP, it's also on the defensive line. DJ Jones, Zach Allen, these guys need to either create penetration on the interior or they need to command double teams, which will allow guys like Randy Gregory and Jonathan Cooper to have success in one-on-one situations. A lot of people are talking about, they didn't have a pass rush last week. That wasn't part of their game plan. And also the way that they were playing it didn't seem like they were trying to set up for that. They were really trying to stop Josh Jacobs. It's a different dynamic this week. Now, you do have two slasher-type backs, though, with Gibson and obviously, what's his name? I'm trying to remember. Antonio? They have Robinson. There we go. Brain fart there. Sorry, folks. Happens sometimes.
You're allowed to have
we'll
a brain
do it live.
Fart again.
Yeah, but they have a good two-headed combination there. But, we see a, fumbling problem there with not Robinson, with Gibson. Gibson fumbled once last week. I think he only had 3 carries in that game, 9 yards. So you can't overlook that. Like I said, week 1, you look at the statistical comparisons between these two teams. It's a small sample size, AP, and you can't just, they're ranked this way. That means they're going to be terrible. No, it's early on in the NFL. Teams are going to adjust here. So for Denver, it's like, hey, can you create pressure on a young quarterback, maybe force him to throw a couple things? Because, hey, Justin Simmons is one of the best guys in the NFL at baiting quarterbacks and making a bad throw, and he can jump it really quickly. You got Patrick Surtain, who locked down Devontae Adams last week, held him to 2 catches for 11 yards while in coverage against him. That's pretty damn impressive. And so I imagine we'll see PS2 on Terry McLaurin at times, but we'll see if, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, we'll see where these guys line up and how the coverage maybe changes a little bit here. I expect a lot of nickel and dime personnel for Denver this week against the Commanders, but that's going to be big. But before we get into maybe some players to watch, maybe who you have your eye on, who I have my eye on, let me tell our friends over there about Superbook Sports. Why bet with the big boys this football season? Instead, try your hand with the local book. That's Superbook Sports. This fall, the Broncos are 3.5-point favorites at home against the Commanders, and Superbook Sports is where you should definitely get involved with. It's a dedicated team of people, of the best odds makers in Las Vegas, making sure that you get the best prices and parlays anywhere. And now, Superbook, they'll give you a bonus of up to $250 when you sign up and wager on the same day and use promo code MileHigh. So bet with the best and use promo code MileHigh this football season with Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, AP, let's open things up a little bit. Players to watch. Who do you have your eye on this week? I already know who I have my eye on, and usually people who tune in, they already have a little bit of a hint at that. But you being an outsider, not really being someone who connects or covers the Broncos daily, from an outsider's perspective, who do you have your eye on in this game here for Denver?
There's a few, honestly. To start with, not a negative, but someone that you want to see improve is Damari Mathis at cornerback. The Raiders did last week, target him. And that's going to happen when you have a guy like Pat Surtain on the other side, who's the definition of a lockdown cornerback. So if Damari Mathis can increase his performance and really, you bring up Dotson, you bring up some of these other guys, it's just going to make everybody's job easier. You don't want to have a leak in the secondary. So I'm looking at Damari Mathis, and one way that you can make Damari Mathis' job a lot easier is getting pressure on the quarterback. So I'm looking at Zach Allen. I'm looking at Randy Gregory. They have got to figure out a way. I believe, no sacks against the Raiders last week. So you need to get pressure on your quarterback, because putting pressure on the quarterback makes it easier for the secondary to do their job. If you give these guys too much time, I think I turned to you maybe a dozen times in the middle of that game last week, and I was like, too much time, and then there goes Jimmy G for the run or the pass, whatever it might be. So I would say Damari Mathis, but how you make Damari Mathis better is by getting pass rush with Zach Allen and Randy Gregory. So on the defensive side of the ball for the Broncos, that's who I'm looking at.
I think those are great picks, and look, you are spot on there. I can tell you this as a cornerback. I had so many of my interceptions throughout my career. You want to know why? Because I had a great defensive line that was in the face of quarterbacks, that was forcing them to throw it, and it allowed me to read routes, jump it, and get interceptions. And look, in today's NFL, because you see quarterbacks now are trying to get the ball out of their hands so quickly, that's one way you can negate a very, very good pass rusher. But you have to find a way to generate that, right? And I think that guys like Zach Allen, DJ Jones, even if we were going about it earlier, if they're able to even command a double team, you get a one-on-one, it allows you to have a chance to win your one-on-one matchups on the outside. Or if you're blitzing a linebacker, you might be able to come free And then you don't have time as a quarterback to throw it to a window or throw a guy open, as we have seen in the past here against the Broncos defense. Knowing Damari Mathis, having a chance to talk with him this week, he's got a good mindset. Look, it happens. You're going to get got in the NFL, and usually when you have a bad game, everybody sees it. Everybody talks about it. You have a good game, nobody hardly talks about it. It's almost a thankless position at times. Right. But Damari's got a great mindset. His guys in the locker room, his teammates believe in him, coaches believe in him. And I encourage Broncos fans, just because he had a bad game doesn't mean, hey, cut, fire, trade. Like, let's not do that.
No.
How do you expect young guys to develop if they don't get tested? You're going to get got sometimes. It's about how you bounce back and respond. If it becomes a consistent thing, then obviously you can have a conversation. But I like your picks there. I think defensively for me, I'm very curious to see what the dynamic looks like now that Caden Stearns is out for the entire year. I mean, Denver planned to use him and Kareem Jackson in certain packages, and unfortunately, season-ending knee injury for him. Kareem is now going to be the starter there. So do we see maybe potentially this week, do we see Delarian Turner-Yell, or do we see rookie J.L. Skinner get thrown into a defensive role? Or is this a week maybe where we talked about them maybe going dime, you see more Asang Bassi and Jaquan McMillan playing inside the slot this week? That's something to keep an eye on here on the defensive side of the ball. But my X factor, I'm telling Broncos fans, keep an eye on this week, even if Jerry Jeudy is back, right? I think Jerry Jeudy, if he is back, evident X factor player, keep an eye on Marvin Mims. He had a couple of targets in the short passing game this past week against the Raiders, but I think they're going to find a way to get him the ball downfield this week. I think he's got the speed. They're going to create some play design opportunities early on to really set it up, and I think you're going to see Marvin Mims. You heard it here first. Marvin Mims is going to be in line for a big game here for the Broncos. Even if it's a 2 catches for 50-yard type of performance, he's going to have a big impact, game-changing play in Sunday's game. He's my player to watch.
I like that, and there's always, different stories that come out from each game, so we'll see what he could do. Another player to kind of look at the offensive side here, I believe Lil Jordan Humphrey's now on the active roster in coordinates with...
Lil Jordan ain't Lil. He's Big Jordan Humphrey.
In coordinates with the Caden Stearns move. So, there's a new wide receiver because, Cortland Sutton was all right last week, but we talked about that deep threat. You wish Jerry Jeudy would be there, but in order to get Russell Wilson to play better, you need to get open. You need to be more creative with your routes. And I want to say one thing about Russ. I put this out on my Twitter. I believe it was yesterday as well. So Russ, not the most exhilarating stat line. 27 for 34, $177 passing, and 2 touchdowns. That's better statistics than Jalen Hurts had in the Eagles' opening week win against the New England Patriots. He threw for more passing yards. Hurts finished with 170 passing yards, 22 for 33, and he threw for another touchdown. So perception is everything. If Will Lutz makes his kicks last week, everybody's probably feeling, pretty differently about Russell Wilson, the offense, the team as a whole. So naturally, everybody's going to look at Russ in this game. But I just saw a lot of negative Nancy's out there with his performance. So
remember that stepping out of bounds play?
Right.
That would have been what, 30-plus yards?
Right.
So he would have been over 200 if that didn't happen in that game there. So, but that's the thing, too. Even like Joe Burrow had a rough game.
Josh Allen, 4 turnovers.
So week 1, I just liked, and you said this as well, I just liked they looked competent on the offense.
They looked different.
They need to do that again.
I know the score was the same. It was the dreaded 16-point mark last year. They looked different. And I know we didn't watch it on TV. We were in the press box. Like, there was something different about the way they the C word, competent. Like, they looked like they at least had an idea of what they were trying to accomplish. I'm curious to see how they now build off that going into week 2.
That's going to be a big thing for them. And look, you want to go into week 3 next week. You have a tough road game against the Miami Dolphins. You don't want to be 0-2 heading into Miami South Beach here in September where it's hot. And you look at the Chargers with them and Tua. Tua threw for 466 in week 1, and he also went for 200 yards with Tyreek Hill. So that's going to be a tough challenge. Obviously, they have some good defensive players. No Jalen Ramsey, obviously, there. It'll be reunited with Bradley Chubb. But Denver needs to go into that game 1-1 versus 0-2. And, hey, it's also tough, too, because if you start off the season 0-2 and your first 2 games have been at home, it makes the rest of the season optics look more difficult. Now, I know that optics are already down after week 1, but Denver wins this game. I think it changes things a little bit. But, yeah, it's going to be a tough challenge. Obviously, the game is going to be set for 2:25 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff at Empower Field at Mile High. You can also check it out, obviously, on your local channels. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Fox will be broadcasting this game. You get Spiro Deeds and Adam Archuleta on the call. But then you're also going to get an episode of Good Morning Broncos the following day to recap the aftermath. You get some post-locker room footage from what was happening, what are players saying. You're going to get all that on GMB. But, hey, Broncos Country, enjoy your weekend. As Colorado Buffs on Saturday, they have a showdown with the CSU Rams, and now that one has now become personal. So now we'll see how that goes. It's an exciting time for Colorado sports fans. If Denver can get a win, CU can continue building momentum the way that they have. Obviously, there's going to be some good discourse here on Mile High Sports. But I'm Cody Roark, speaking from a good friend, Aniello Piro. We'll see you on Monday morning for the aftermath of Week 2.